Hello, everybody, and welcome. Hello. Hi, my name is Rich Fernandez, and I am the CEO of the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. And I'm so happy to welcome you all to our Changemaker Forum. And I'm especially pleased today to announce our special guest, Lauren Holaly-Zembo. So welcome as well, Lauren. So happy you could join us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation with you, Rich.
Yeah, and it's been many years, a number of years at least, in the making, and we'll share with you a little bit about our work together. But really the topic today is transforming a city with mindfulness. And Lauren and the team at the Crim Fitness Foundation have done extraordinary work in doing just that. So we're so happy to share with you about some of those initiatives and some of the impact that they're having, the background about how it all came together. So that will be the topic and the focus of our conversation today. And just a few words about logistics for today. It is a conversation. So I'm happy to say that Laura and I will be talking for probably about half of this time we have together, where again, we'll go over the background, the history, and some of the amazing initiatives and impact around mindfulness in the community of Flint, Michigan, and the surrounding communities. And then also, we will certainly make time for Q&A. We typically like to stop about halfway through our time together and just open it up for anyone who has questions. And the way you can ask a question, of course, is enter it into the chat bar or press the raise your hand icon. And our Zoom master today is Grace, who is part of the SIYLI team, and she will help me monitor the chat bar as well. So when you have questions, please just enter them in. And like I said, we'll certainly make space and time for those to get answered, because this is a really, I think, not only fascinating topic, but really important topic, which is transforming a city with mindfulness and how to actually make that happen. So let me tell you a little bit about Lauren, and then maybe we can talk about your organization as well, Lauren. But Lauren's the CEO of the Crim Fitness Foundation, and she's actually worked at Crim. You've been there since 2008. And were appointed to be the CEO September 1st, 2020. And as we were chatting a little bit in advance of this, you know, it's kind of an interesting time to transition into that role given the pandemic and the lockdown. But you've been at Crim for a long time, and in the past 5 years, you've helped relaunch the historic community education model that was originally created in 1935. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And which is really a community-wide system of support for students and families in Flint's community schools, International Academy of Flint, and the Flint Cultural Center Academy. You've also been coordinating efforts broadly to create healthy communities through policy systems and environmental changes. Would love to hear about that as well, kind of the use of open space and parks and so forth to help promote wellness. You also have experience in non-motorized transportation, parks and recreation, safe routes to schools, health, community engagement, and planning initiatives. And you're also a Flint service champion, supporting culture of service through an increase in national service and volunteerism. And finally, you're also, well, not finally, but in addition to all of that, you're also a mindfulness ambassador, working to bring mindfulness into the culture of the Crim organization and the greater Flint community. Having trained also in mindfulness-based stress reduction, and of course, our core Search Inside Yourself curriculum. So I am just so happy to welcome you. What I also love is that in your spare time, you enjoy running, snowmobiling, traveling, and spending time with your family, including your husband and 2 young daughters, which is so wonderful. I don't know anything about snowmobiling, so it sounds fun though.
Midwest girl right here. We're used to snow.
Yeah, Midwestern United States, you get the snow for sure. Here in California, we don't really. But anyway, Lauren, it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today. So welcome again. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I thought we could start with maybe just talking a little bit about the background of first the Crim Fitness Foundation. It's got such an interesting history as a trusted partner in the community there, focused on health and well-being, all the way through policy and mindfulness. So can you just tell us a little bit about the origins of this foundation that you're now running?
Sure. Yeah. So the Crim Fitness Foundation is a nonprofit located in Flint, Michigan. And we have been in existence really since 1977, when former Michigan Speaker of the House, Bobby Crim, just an amazing individual, wanted to do a fundraiser for Special Olympics. So he created this road running race. And so, a few thousand people show up and they participate. And then it just became a thing where every August, fourth Saturday in August, people gathered and we had this running race. And it just became this great event where the community came together in Flint and really celebrated and ran the streets. It became so popular that we formed into a nonprofit. We had a pretty progressive board of directors who said, we got this great race thing going, but we could do more in terms of health for the community of Flint and Genesee County in which we're located. So then we started to do more programs and different activities. So our race has really been the foundation. It's called the Hap Crim Festival of Races, happens every fourth Saturday in August. You guys are all welcome. Anybody tuning in, please come to Flint and check it out. I think it's one of the best 10-mile races in the nation. We get an average of 10,000 participants, 50,000 spectators. Flint residents are lining the street cheering people on to do something that maybe they never thought they could do. Run 10 miles, run 5 miles, walk, all of those different things. Just a tremendous day in the city. We also added on a training program. Residents wanted to be, maybe 10 miles was a big distance for them. So we wanted to be able to help them train, learn healthy behaviors. So we have a training program that goes May to August, 15 weeks, meets every week, runs the streets of Flint, and gets people prepared to do that race in August. And that has really created another culture in Flint around running. So everybody knows that on Tuesday night, if you're downtown Flint, you're going to see people out running, and those are Crim runners. And it creates this sense of community where people are out on their front porch, maybe just hanging out, and they're waving hi, and our groups are saying, hey, join us next year. So it's all about, for Crim, creating this community of health. We then took our programs into the schools. We do nutrition education, lessons in classrooms around how to eat healthy foods, increase fruits and veggie consumption. We have school gardens. We teach kids where food comes from and do a lot of garden-based education. So we're in the schools working a lot with youth. We were doing adults, right? We were working with youth. And then we realized, well, we can't really ask people to do all these healthy behaviors if they don't have a safe place to do it. So that's where the kind of the policy systems work came in, and is really my passion. So I came in to do that work when I first started here at the Crim in 2008, and led a coalition of organizations called Safe and Active Genesee for Everyone to help create spaces, places, work with city governments to incorporate health into their planning. Every time, we have new developments, we want to make sure that sidewalks go in. We make sure we have bike lanes. It's accessible for people with disabilities. We have great parks to run in or be active, whatever activity you want to do. So we really took it upon ourselves to get into that space, because we knew that we couldn't just tell people to do it if we weren't going to actively pursue that as well. So then we were like, wow, we got this. We got some healthy behaviors, we got some environments. And then we had a staff person come to and say, hey, what about this topic of mindfulness? That's kind of maybe the missing piece for us, because if you can't really be in the present moment and your stress and all that, can you really make the healthy choice? I thought, okay, that's cool. We sent one of our staff people to California to learn from mindful schools, came back and started working in schools and doing mindfulness. And we had probably one mindfulness educator at that time going into schools, now have added many more. And they've gone into schools to teach lessons to students, but also model them for teachers. So it's not our intent to ever just be constantly going into school. We really want to build that system. And so we teach the teachers how to do this. And after many years now, they've really incorporated it into their practice. So some schools may practice all together. They may, at the beginning of the day, somebody gets on the PA system and they just lead a mindful moment, or teachers may just use it when they are transitioning between subjects or everybody's out of control for a moment. Let's just take a moment, you know? So they all use it in their own ways. And so when we saw that was really, really impactful, we started to do more with mindfulness. But I do want to mention, in 2014, you talked about the Flint community education model, which is also a big project of mine that is so near and dear to my heart, is that in 1935, Charles Stewart Mott and Frank Manley in Flint created this model where the schools were just closing at 3:30, right? Kids got out of school, and then the building was locked and nothing was happening. And they were like, well, why don't we open up the school building? Why don't we have recreational opportunities for the community? Why aren't parents being engaged? So they literally opened up the buildings on Saturdays, everything, hired these people called community school directors, and they were responsible for doing all of these other wraparound services for kids. And so it became this model in Flint. People would come from all over the world to see what was happening. And as a while, the model kind of fizzled out. And in 2012, the city of Flint did their first master plan in 50 years. And the community overwhelmingly said, we got to have this model back. You know, our kids, I think our kids need this community education model where schools are open, there's after school programs, there's things going on all the time. And so a group of us got together and we made it happen. And I'm proud of the Crim to be able to serve as the lead for that. It's happening all across the nation. It's not just happening in Flint. Community schools, the community schools model is happening, and we're connected with in that network of the Coalition for Community Schools and all of that great work going on. But we've been doing that. So the Crim serves as a lead agency. We're in 13 schools. We have 13 community school directors on staff that are some of the most passionate people you will ever meet, just working every day. And they help us bring that mindfulness work into the schools. So the teachers were doing it, but then we trained all our staff. We trained all the after school staff in mindfulness and many of the people, so that when a student maybe experienced it in their classroom and then they went to after school, they were having the same experience. They were getting the same language and just really creating that experience where they knew that mindfulness was a tool that they could use in whatever space they were in. And even at home, we have kids going home and saying to their parents, like, whoa, you need a mindful moment. Like, can we take a moment? Let's just breathe.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I had the actual privilege of coming to Flint, Michigan, and I think attending one of those community-based offerings on mindfulness where it was after school hours and there was a room that was open and two of your staff members facilitated a mindfulness session for anyone, right? So, and we actually had I think two parents just kind of walk in because they knew it was happening from the community. And I think we had an educator there and I can't remember who else was there, but it was just such a perfect microcosm, a perfect kind of example of how there's you've kind of opened a gate for people in many ways to really start to take on these tools and practices. And it was just so easeful to experience that. And it was wonderful, which also brings us to how we came to meet, where I think, by the way, our listeners are international. So I don't know if everybody is aware, but, Flint has a really interesting history. Of course, that's where General Motors got its start, and it had its first factory. And we've actually held a big mindfulness training in the first General Motors factory that was converted now as a training space. But it's also experienced some challenges, the Flint water crisis, the tragedy of that. So perhaps, can you just tell us a little bit about maybe a little bit about the background of Flint and how we came to work together even around the topic of bringing this very broadly into the community? Yeah,
I mean, I think that you described a lot of it, but really a post-industrial city kind of looking at reinventing itself. We've had a lot of, bad press, but this is why I love having this opportunity to tell people about amazing stuff happening in Flint. Anytime I can do that, I love to be able to do that, because it is a city that has been extremely resilient from, General Motors leaving to a water crisis, to now in a pandemic with the rest of the world. But it seems like it's been kind of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, which just speaks to the importance of doing this work, I think, even more. So when we were on this mindfulness work, I had an opportunity. I think our mindfulness director couldn't attend, and she said, "Hey, I've got a spot in Detroit. Would you want to go to the Search Inside Yourself training?" And I was at the time leading community education. I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll go and check it out. Great." And if you've heard my story, I was very much a skeptic of mindfulness in the beginning. I
think I remember that. Yeah.
I was like, no. I've always had a lot of anxiety. I've always been moving really fast. I was always out in the community. I wanted to do so much. So I was like, no, I have time for mindfulness. Like, it's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to sit there. So I went to Search Inside Yourself in Detroit, and it was an amazing opportunity because I got to participate with a lot of like engineers and auto workers that I normally wouldn't interact with. So it was great to get another perspective. And I just came back and I said to our whole organization, I said, we got to get this in Flint. I said, every person really needs the opportunity to experience this because it was so practical and it didn't feel like it was overwhelming. It was just like really easy steps on how to, become more self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and be a leader in your own way, whatever that meant for you. So I came back and I said, we got to figure out how to do this. And so I think that's how our relationship started. Was we said, hey, we really want to bring this to Flint, like in a big way. Like, how can we do that? And then of course, you and Michelle came a few years ago and trained 120 community leaders on this. And the response to that was overwhelming. Of how positive they were. They were just like amazed. Everybody's, as you probably know, like everybody, I think the first day is kind of like, ooh, what did I get myself into? Yeah. And then the second day, they're like, this is amazing. I need everybody in my organization to get this. So I think that's what we experienced there. And that's really how our relationship kind of started.
Right. And, I think part of the appeal was, of course, it is our aim is always. So if you're not familiar with Search Inside Yourself, we offer basically a science-based mindfulness and emotional intelligence curriculum to help provide, well-being tools, leadership tools, sustainable high performance tools. And we offered this to the community of Flint, as Lauren, you were saying. And yeah, I just experienced this incredible response. So then the question became, how do we really bring this into the community in a sustainable, scalable way so that we don't have to, as a staff at Search Inside Yourself, we don't have to run these. And I think that's where we are today, which is we've, I think, very successfully partnered with you all on a train-the-trainer model, right? Where now you have your facilitators actively teaching this across the Flint community and city.
Yeah, so this is one of the most exciting things I could just talk about all day that we're doing right now, I think. And we had to think about, so my background is in social work and community organizing. And so I wanted to figure out a way to scale this in a way that made sense. And I think people hear the message from somebody they trust, right? Or somebody they have a relationship with. And so what we wanted to do was, we were really successful at taking into schools, but what we thought was like literally every resident, every business person needs to hear this message. And so how can we really get this out into every space? So we created this Mindful Cities model where we have broken it into 5 sectors that we really want to work with. And we put out an application process for people to become fellows with us and get trained to teach the Search Inside Yourself curriculum. But we really wanted a diverse group of people. We wanted them from, the business sector, the health sector, community leaders. We wanted diversity in background, race, all of that, so that we could really have a diverse pool of trainers to be able to go out and work with communities in a meaningful way. So that is not an easy process for those fellows. Those fellows have worked for a year during a pandemic, doing it virtually, to get certified to teach the curriculum with your guys' support. I mean, it's just been amazing to hear the stories about the fellows, and they've graduated, and now like already we've got, I think we're teaching like 7 practicums in the next month to really, really diverse organizations. So our fellows have made a commitment to be with us for at least the next 2 years to teach in the community in all those sectors. So that's one of the ways that we're sort of operationalizing this mindful city, is that it's not enough to just talk about it and have some great offerings, but we really want to be intentional about building capacity within the community to share this out.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's such a wonderful. And what I actually want to do is, we were talking about this earlier. We're talking and sharing with you in our conversation about all these wonderful initiatives, but I also like to show, not just tell. So I just I took the liberty of taking a few screenshots from your website and from your materials to share with the audience, just so you can get a flavor of what we're talking about here when we talk about transforming a city through mindfulness. So I'm just going to put up this slide here that might give you a little bit of a flavor of what we mean, and really, I think, and I want to speak broadly here about what you all are doing at Crim, which is like a wide variety of things. So I think the first thing I noticed when I looked at this slide was that, to your earlier point, you work kind of at a systems level, and if you look across that top bar there, you see that certainly this is from the mindfulness tab. But if you look across that very top bar, you see that there's also, the race, there's also the physical education, the community piece, the advocacy and policy piece, and the mindfulness piece. And all of those are kind of like almost like a systems approach or view, Lauren, that is just so incredible to see. Nutrition, active communities, physical education, sports, the race itself, community education. I mean, as you were mentioning earlier, it really comes at it from a systems perspective, and mindfulness is in there as well. And just to share with everybody, this comes from the kind of offering of Crim around creating a mindful Flint, a mindful city that's Flint, Michigan. And it's a wide array of offerings that are just so wonderful, from yoga and mindfulness meditation, you see on the left there, to specific mindfulness workshops, a mindful me, personal mindfulness practice, helping people create that for themselves, sharing it with youth, creating customized workshops. These are just some of the offerings. And then I think importantly, if you look here under resiliency learning, we were talking about this earlier, if you're not familiar with the adverse childhood experience model, it really talks about early childhood trauma, whether it be, kind of personalized, systemic, and so forth, and the impact that has on well-being and long-term health. And what's beautiful here is that you have an education program around what is ACE, what is ACEs, which is the syndrome, right? Early adverse childhood experience syndrome. What's its effect? And more importantly, how can you develop resiliency in the face of something like ACEs? And then the formal mindfulness trainings like MBSR, the yoga education training, and of course, our Search Inside Yourself workshop, which, like you said, is kind of running on a regular basis there with the fellows and now the trained trainers. So I just wanted to share this with the audience. I'll come off slides, but I would also encourage you to just go to the Crim site, Crim Fitness Foundation, and check out the amazing things that are happening there, because it really is something extraordinary, not just from the mindfulness perspective, but I think also taking this kind of systems-based approach to your city's well-being, which we would love to see more of in the world.
One thing that's not on there, exciting, that we have coming up too, is we're doing mindful kayaking down the Flint River.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So we're trying to bring some of those pieces together, partner with our Watershed Coalition, and do some other just really unique things of taking mindfulness into any place that we can. So if I have a tip for anybody out there, just immerse it in anything. You can probably find a connection, but yeah.
Beautiful. So listen, I wanted to also invite the audience. We're roughly halfway through our time together. And if you're listening, if you have questions, Laura and I can certainly keep talking and exploring more, but we definitely want to make this interactive. So I would say that if you have any questions, please go ahead and send them either through the chat bar, or raise your hand, and we'll be happy to answer. And while I guess I don't see anything coming through right now, and Grace, if you see anyone raise a hand, just let us know. I have a few more questions, of course, and topics we can cover if we're not getting any questions. One of them is impact, right? Because this is an incredible set of offerings, and it's very, kind of well over time. It's just been growing, and we've been building these things. What impacts are you seeing? If we talk about the mindfulness piece, what happens when this starts to come from the school into the family, for example? Are you seeing anything that is notable to you from what you're seeing so far?
I think one of the notable things for me is the school buildings. As someone who's worked in the school district for about 10 years now, and thinking back, is to see the difference in the culture and the feel of a school building when I walk into it. There's buildings I can walk in, and when you see, we call them scholars, we call our students scholars. When we see our scholars come in for a assembly or a presentation, and the way they walk in and the way they quietly sit and the way maybe their principal will lead them in a mindful moment, and they know exactly what that means, and they're engaged in the practice. When I see kids in classrooms self-selecting to maybe go to a mindfulness space within the classroom to kind of self-regulate, those are the things that are just really powerful that maybe the data doesn't show if we're looking at hard data. When we look at our survey responses from participants and our teachers, in Search Inside Yourself, we're getting over 90% satisfaction rates. Like, this was beneficial to me. This helped me. Yes, I would recommend it to a friend. So I think overall, we're seeing a really positive impact. Internally at the Crim, we've been working very hard to make sure that this is part of the way our organization functions, because if we're going to ask other people to do it, we have to model it. And so our staff has been working really hard to bring that into operation in the way we function together as colleagues. So taking time to start meetings with a moment, or maybe, just a moment to arrive, making sure that we're having times for maybe formal practice. We have every Monday at our organization when we're in person. Now we're doing it virtually, but a drop-in kind of mindfulness room. If you want to come in and do a group practice together, great.
Yep.
If you ever want to use the room by yourself to practice during the day, need a moment, can do that. And giving our employees the tools to be able to do that and really build their capacity. One of the things I always say that I'm most proud of here is that I think if you asked any one of our staff to lead you in a mindful moment to start a meeting, they would be able to do it.
Wow.
And that's speaks to their commitment to this body of work. It's not just a mindfulness team of people that are doing the work, and they're doing a lot of the work, but it's the entire organization supporting that team of mindfulness and really embedding it in our work, as you said, as a systems approach, and making it just part of the culture.
Love that. Yeah, it's so important. You can't give what you don't have, we like to say. So being a practitioner is so important. Hey, we have a really a great question from Diana coming in from social media streaming platform, which is, the question is, how do you present these initiatives at a city level as a citizen and backed by an organization? That's a great question, because that's very much, I think, how you all approached it. I know, like, you and Jerry, who was the CEO previously, and the team there really tried to work at that citywide level. So maybe tell us a little bit about that history and how it progressed. And Crim's role, because Crim plays, to the last part of Diana's question, that trusted partner is Crim, right? But how did you get city buy-in, and then where did they meet?
Well, I think it comes from some of the things we talked about, just our longstanding trust within the community. We have a 44-year history in the community of being of service. And we've always been, I think, responsive to the needs of the community and trying to listen and just really trying to do whatever we could do to help. And we've worked with our city a lot, as I said, on planning initiatives. So it's all about, for me, it's all about relationships and creating positive, partnerships. So in working with the city, one of the also things that we have is a resilience initiative at the city level called Recast. So they have a federal SAMHSA grant to do some resilience work as well. So partnering with them to help, they're already kind of bought into it. But I think if I were to, all of the times when I've worked with cities in the past around even parks or trail development or any of that, is really sharing with the municipality places where it's worked, examples of how it's worked, data around why it works, and just kind of making the case for that. And then I think to what your point, Rich, you said about having an organization, cities are really busy. School districts are really busy. That's why we do community education, is finding maybe a partner, whether it's a nonprofit or somebody else in the community that can help take the lead and be the convener on it, is helpful in moving it forward.
Yeah, I know. As we led up to, to Diana's question as well, this was kind of like a build process, right? That I know that there was a point where you all did some very sort of like keynotes and pilots with certain select city leaders and across sector, not just in the government, but I remember you were talking about having folks from the healthcare system, the educational system, the church community, and so forth. I remember when we came to Flint, that 120-person community leader included reverends from the churches, business leaders, medical doctors. The mayor showed up. It was kind of like this kind of cross-sector experience where we were offering also something, as you said, that was well regarded and backed up by like good data, which is search inside yourself. It came out of Google. We've been around for over 10 years. We have tons of data for thousands of participants showing lots of impact. And then you were the convener. Crim was the convener, this trusted partner in the community. And that kind of three-way partnership, I will call it, really created a kind of container or a framework that I think put a lot of leaders in the community. And the mayor was super enthusiastic. I remember she came to dinner afterwards and she was just so like enthusiastic about this as well. I think it created a lot of buy-in to be able to have the trusted convener and partner like yourselves, someone like us who could help out and support the efforts with our content and curriculum. And then it was amazing to see the city leaders at all these different levels coming in as well.
And again, not underestimating, the power of the relationships you have with people, because, around this topic, sometimes, there was the skeptic, right? So sometimes it took a call for me to say, hey, know that this might not be your thing, but I need you to show up.
Right.
Will you try it for me? And if you don't like it, okay, but will you try it? Because trust me, I think it's going to be helpful. And I would say probably 9 times out of 10 it was, right? Like people were like, oh, okay, I get it now. You're not asking me to, formally sit for 45 minutes or do something that I was really uncomfortable with. It was about leadership. It was about having conversations. It was about how to make your community better. It was about how to be a better person and how to be a better colleague to your fellow employees. So I think it was that trust in the relationships and really reaching out in a meaningful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think the last part, because there are 3 questions in this question that came in, there's one interesting one as a citizen, right? So, again, in my role, I run this training institute. In your role, you run this nonprofit that is a community partner for decades now. But what about as a citizen? Like, how can folks as themselves, as individuals, as citizens, perhaps activate and get involved in transforming their city through mindfulness? It sounds like such a big endeavor, but how at the individual level do you think? I'm happy to share ideas too, but I'd be curious. Yeah,
I think at the individual level, it's getting tuned into your own mindfulness practice. So at least having some base level of knowledge, right? So maybe going to a training or practicing with other people or finding that community within your city that maybe you guys could kind of band together to create this. And then I think talking to, your local officials about some of the ways that you think mindfulness could be beneficial. One of the things I haven't talked about that we're doing as well is we're working with police officers and first responders right now. So that's
Wow.
directly affecting a city and how they function. So we have already trained 2 cohorts of firefighters in mindfulness, and we're getting ready in the fall to launch a project with the Flint Police Department to
Wow.
train police officers in mindfulness. So, I mean, that's a real kind of great place to start, I think, too, is like if you're talking with city councils or other people about like, I as a citizen, I'm concerned, and I've really heard a lot about mindfulness. And here's some of the things that are happening in other cities. I mean, police officers are being trained, and firefighters, and reverends and leaders. I think it's just really about sparking conversation in your community. Each community is so different. So I think you have to kind of do what feels right in your community. But getting a basic understanding and getting some key individuals together would be where I would start.
Yeah, that's great. I agree with you. Firsthand experience of the very thing we're talking about for yourself is kind of the starting point. And then it's rallying, the other partners. But like, I'm amazed by what you're saying about the police department, the fire. So how did you present this to them? Because we're always facing that challenge. How did this come about, Laura?
They actually came to us. So the fire department came to us and said, we have a lot of firefighters that are experiencing stress, trauma. It's the job, it's the pandemic. Is there anything you could do to help us? And we said, of course. So as you saw, we do customized training. We have a highly trained staff, certified in MBSR, Search Inside Yourself. We have an ACEs master trainer on staff, all of those trainings. So when we say that we offer those trainings, it's really important to have certified teachers in that. But we designed something where we literally had the officers, because of the pandemic, come into our office and all be separated in different people's offices on Zoom together and doing the training. And we do 6 to 8 week sessions once a week. And once we did the first one, the fire chief and the deputy fire chief said, we need more of this. So that's been a big win.
Was that the customized version for them? Yeah.
But we're using, we contract with Richard Gorling at Mindful Badge. And we're working with Richard on that project then with the police. So we've got a little bit of buy-in from the firefighters. And so they're a great advocate for us to then take it to other departments in the city to say, hey, this has been really beneficial as a first responder. I think this would be beneficial to you. So talking to fellow police officers and talking to the chief of police, who's fully on board with it as well. And then we've been talking to the Genesee County Sheriff's Department as well, because if you know me, right, systems approach, we don't want to just have one department trained. We want to have everybody trained so that no matter what officer you come in contact with, hopefully they're going to, have that same mindfulness training.
Wow.
So we certainly don't have it figured out. I don't want to give the impression that we're doing all this stuff, we've got it all figured out, but we're piloting these things with the intent that we try them, we get the feedback from the participants, and then we change it up, and then we come back again. And we're always thinking about how are we going to kind of institutionalize it into their practice, and so that we don't have to be there forever. So we're going to do a train the trainer model with the firefighters, so that maybe they have someone on staff that can then become the trainer, and it doesn't have to be Crim doing it.
Wow.
Because if we're going to reach 100,000 people in the city of Flint, become Mindful Flint, we're going to have to train a lot of other people to be ambassadors.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it sounds like I can just speak from the SIY perspective, but one thing we know is that we heard there's a multi-thousand person wait list for SIY. And so why do you think people are so interested? Is it because there's those skeptics out there like you were, right? So like, what has tipped this balance? Why is there a multi-thousand person wait list for SIY in your community?
I think the 120 people came and saw you and Michelle, and you guys were amazing.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I think they all went back and said, well, I work for this organization that's got 20 people, and I want my organization trained. And I just think that list grew from the initial training, and then we're just out there talking about it. And honestly, every time, I was just speaking with a group yesterday of women leaders, and two people on the call said, I've been on, yes, I can speak to SIY. I went to the training and it was awesome. And then we had everybody on that call emailing me saying, I need to get on the wait list. Yes. So it's just word of mouth, again, from other people that they trust who have gone through it. And they're like, oh, I'm friends with that person. I get it. They liked it. I think that'd be good for me too.
Great. Wow. Amazing. Amazing how that works. And by the way, for the listeners, towards the end of this, I'll share with you like a discount code if you are interested in any of the SIY offerings. And like a link to find out like where you can register if you're interested. Because we keep talking about SIY, search inside yourself, like this mindfulness and emotional intelligence curriculum. And there's ways you can actually experience that. And again, for the listeners here, we're going to offer a discount code. Where do you see this is all going? Like, so if like the city transforms through mindfulness in the education sector with the firefighters and the police officers, with some of the community leaders, like, what do you, what's your wave your magic wand moment? Like, I know the journey is never complete because it's an ongoing practice, right? We're continuously learning, we're continuously trying to adapt to whatever life throws at us. But what would be your kind of, if I could wave my magic wand, where is this mindfulness offering going in your city?
Yeah, I think we would just see a community of people that are interacting in a different way together, that are being compassionate towards one another, that we'd see, a reduction in violence, that we would see increased collaboration. And I don't know, just a city that's thriving and talking kind of the same language. And I don't know I don't know when we're gonna see that, because it is my ultimate goal that, 100,000 people have experienced mindfulness in the city of Flint. Our goal is to reach 30,000 in the next 5 years. And I think I'm just hoping it's going to be one of those moments where, similar to when I walk into a school and I go, oh, this just feels like a different culture, that, when I'm out in the community and I'm talking with people, that we're having regular conversations about mindfulness, and we're going to meetings and people are practicing together. And I just think it'll be a beautiful thing to see everybody on the same page. And maybe that's unrealistic, but we're going to try it, because we're Crim and we do things aggressively, and we're just going to go out there. We're going to try it, and we're going to probably fail a few times along the way, but we're going to learn from it, and we're going to adjust and then come back.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that vision. And, I think it is not just something that is wanted by people, but perhaps needed more than ever before with all the things we confront. I don't know if anyone else has any questions. So if you do have questions, now's a great time to just enter them in, and we can address them directly and see what you come up with. I think the last thing I would ask you about is, what are some of the challenges? So like, have there been any barriers or roadblocks that you think it's important for people who aspire to do this, that is to transform their city through mindfulness? What are some of the obstacles that need to be considered on this path?
I think, the initial skepticism is always the first hurdle, is that I don't even really want to talk about that. Maybe I don't even want to hear about it. So I think, the neuroscience approach to this has been very helpful. It was helpful for me personally to understand that this isn't just something that, somebody came up with that's like, oh, it would be nice to have or nice to do. It's really based on neuroscience. So I think that's a really helpful thing to start with, is that people have to understand what it is and how it benefits you personally, as we talked about. And then how does, when a bunch of people understand it together, transform really that community? So I think that's the initial challenge. The other challenge right now is being apart and being disconnected, which I know is not different than anybody else, but it just creates a strain on the ability to do this work. It's not the same as you and I sitting across the room from each other, having this conversation and practicing together. So I think that kind of losing a little bit of momentum there. It's hard to be apart because I feel like we're a little bit more disconnected from each other as ever, and we're getting really used to that virtual space. And I think as humans, we are built for social connectedness, and so it's going to be getting back to that place of social connectedness that we're actually wired for.
Love it. It's great. Yeah. And I would just add, if I could, to that also, that two things. One is just be aware of your own mindset as you embark upon this work. I remember one of our key collaborators and champions is a guy named Peter Bosselman, who works at SAP. He's actually their head of their global mindfulness programs. And he's now brought SIY into SAP, the software company, and they've trained over 13,000 people. And he took a train-the-trainer approach, but he was always being told from the beginning, this will never work at SAP. We're too skeptical. This is too, frou-frou, whatever, it's too loosey-goosey. They're very skeptical. And I remember speaking with him those early days and saying, ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Just run some experiments. And he took that up in a big way, and here we are today, right? So I think overcoming your own doubts, perhaps, and being willing to experiment. And then the second thing is related to that, which is you don't have to start huge, right? This isn't about installing a train-the-trainer like from day one. This is about offering little experiments, a keynote here, a practice session there. I remember when I started this mindfulness work, I was working at eBay. I was an executive there, and I just have my own mindfulness practice. And I just invited first some of my immediate colleagues who literally were sitting right around me. I said, I'm going to just go and do a little meditation sit if anyone is interested. And then I had 2 come, and then they invited friends, and then they invited friends, and it became like 200 within like a couple of months, so that I couldn't even do it anymore. And I had to reserve separate space and hire external facilitators. So I think that just, start in small ways, and small steps can lead to kind of the broader offering and initiative.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Rich. It's really small steps. I mean, we've been at this for more than 10 years now. So it literally started with like Deepak Chopra came and presented a community-wide talk, and 1,000 people came, more than 1,000 people came. Right. And then it was working with teachers in school. So it's been an evolution. So I don't want people to get that. It's really small steps, and you're gonna sometimes have to take a step backwards, but I just encourage people to try and persist through it because it is so worth it in the end.
Yeah, great. Well, this kind of relates to the next question, which Jasmir Tour has put up here, which is great. Thank you for that, which is, what advice would you give to a boots on the ground educator in a school if mindfulness is not part of the current culture and climate? What advice would you give?
I would try and find a connection in something that maybe your school district is already doing. If there is one, that'd be my first step. So for example, in our district, we have positive behavior intervention support, PBIS. I don't know if other districts use that, but that's kind of their behavior kind of model system. And one of their sayings, it's like, be respectful, be responsible, be safe, be mindful. So we've incorporated be mindful into kind of that space. But the other thing that I'll say is a lot of schools are working on restorative justice practices. They are really moving in that direction. I think this is a space where this fits. So if your district's doing anything around any of those things, maybe suggesting like, hey, I've seen a few other schools doing this. They're using mindfulness in this way. If you're not opposed, to it, or you wouldn't get in trouble, I would also say you could do some training yourself and just practice it in your classroom, just starting the day with, giving students a moment to say, hey, let's just, we're all coming from, I don't know what happened before you got to school, but, maybe let's all just take 3 breaths together. Mm-hmm. Or take a break in between subjects, get up, do a few, yoga stretches or something. Just easy stuff to incorporate throughout your day, and maybe it'll catch on. But otherwise, I'd suggest seeing if districts seem to want, they have a way they do things, and they're very entrenched in, I think, the way schools work. And so if you can connect it to something that they're already doing or initiative, I think it makes the ask a little bit easier.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Maybe what I could offer is also taking the secular science-based approach. You mentioned neuroscience as kind of a great gateway. I think it's also important in a school, which is, a setting with kids from all kinds of backgrounds and traditions, that we offer kind of a secular and science-based approach. So that's not like one tradition over another, but this is really kind of rooted in some of the neuroscience research, for example. That tends to be a great, and there has been a lot of discussion about that, because some of the origins of this comes from more traditional cultures, both East and West. You have them in all sorts of traditional cultures and religions, aspects of mindfulness, that is, or aspects of meditation. And so what I think is important, though, is what gets presented is understanding that there are those roots and those origins as well, and that what the curriculum is designed based upon is the contemporary research on the science of mindfulness, and that the practices that are being offered are based on those strains of research. So that they're not being represented as one tradition as the way to do this versus another. I think it's also really important. It's a very extensive subject that I would also maybe invite educators to really look into and think about how you're presenting it as well. I think it's really important, so that everybody feels comfortable. Great. Well, I'm going to ask Grace also if you're interested in exploring some of these SIY offerings, again, around these secular approaches to mindfulness and emotional intelligence. You can see here on the screen, first of all, if we want to offer everyone who's listening a discount if you wanted to attend any of these. And then some of these are free, like our Pause and Practice, these Changemaker forums. But we also have some core programming, like the core Search Inside Yourself program or experience, the Adaptive Resilience program, the Effective Teaming program. All of these are kind of based in this secular, science-based, neuroscience-based approach to mindfulness and emotional intelligence. So if you're interested, come check out us at the link here, SIYLI.org. You can see our calendar there. You could follow us on the usual channels. We also have free meditations on the Insight Timer app. If you're familiar with that, they're a new partner for us, and we're offering some of our mindfulness and meditation practices free there. And again, come join us if you'd like. Entering Changemaker is a special discount code if you want to go to some of our programs. But Lauren, I am so thrilled that we're at this stage in the work, and that what started off as a conversation and some pilots and keynotes early on, and that you're deciding to go and experience the SIY program has now blossomed into this kind of approach where now you have the trained trainers in your organization offering SIY, but also all of the other things that you're talking about, to create a city that hopefully is, bringing mindfulness as a practice across its different sectors. And I just also want to really applaud you, because it's rare that I speak with a mindfulness champion who sees things from a systemic level, and really is actively working across different kind of parts of the city, really, the city's infrastructure and, all of its, the different agencies. I mean, linking nutrition and movement and exercise with space, safe spaces, and places where you can exercise with mindfulness, bringing mindfulness into the kayaking experience on the river. It's just a beautiful approach to systems-based approach. So I don't know, as someone who's done this for many, many years now, any last words you might want to offer to the listeners around taking that perspective?
Oh, that's a hard question.
It is a hard question. I'm sorry.
Because my brain kind of thinks that way. I kind of think systematically, but I just encourage people to check it out. Like I said, check out stuff on our website. If you've never experienced anything, I think, all our virtual programs right now, anybody could participate, really anywhere in the world. We have virtual yoga, we have virtual meditation, any of those things. So, and it doesn't have to be us. I'd say check it out anywhere, but I just offer that up and just, start to explore it yourself. And then, maybe find some other champions within your community and think about where you could have the most impact in your community. Because as I said, every community is so different. We're a community of 100,000, which is relatively a small town. That's why we can get people together. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and the nonprofits know each other. So thinking about what that scale looks like in your community, but really thinking about always, how do you build the capacity of somebody else to kind of carry it on, is something we're always thinking about, kind of as I mentioned. So if you bring it in, how can you kind of share it, and how can you build somebody else up and make those grassroots leaders in your community to share it with, then, they're one person, or maybe they're 500 people, but that's how it's going to spread, we think. So yeah, and I'm certainly, if anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out to me by email, and I can connect you either with myself or somebody on our team that might be able to help.
Wonderful. Well, Lauren, thank you so much, first and foremost, for the work you do in the world, and for the work your organization does. And of course, for being here as a guest on our Changemaker Forum. I think it's appropriately named, and appropriately you are a changemaker, my friend. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for sharing your insights, wisdom, perspectives, and practical tips. And I just would invite us all to just perhaps take a breath now and consider each of our unique parts in the furtherance of this work of mindfulness, and how we can transform our cities and perhaps our world, but first ourselves through this practice. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Rich, for having me. This has just been such a great conversation. I just love sharing our work. I just want to say I'm grateful to you and your team for our partnership and helping us make this happen. We couldn't do it without you. So just really appreciate that. And, all the kind compliments. It's really, I'm just humbled by your comments about being a change maker. And so thank you. Thank you so much.
Most welcome. Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much, and be well. Bye-bye.